During the summer, Saturday's meant to be the quiet day of the week, the day where I perhaps take a day off, but today, no, there is no resting for Ryan 118 because we have a lot to talk about today. Celtic have apparently inquired about a potential signing in this summer transfer window. We have to talk about that. Could we be set to strengthen our centre defensive midfield department very, very soon? All of that plus a lot of shite to talk about. I want to rubbish some rumours, some things flying around on the internet that people are getting their... People are pishing their frillies, right? And I want to put an end to that. So bear with me. We're in for a busy Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit like and subscribe because we are now less than 200 subscribers away from 50k. I can't believe I'm actually saying those words aloud, but here we are. So get down below, hit those buttons, it's absolutely free. I want to try and fly through things today because there is actually a lot to talk about, like loads. I can't quite believe it for a Saturday, so let's try and just motormouth our way through this. The midfielder in question is Turkish international Demir Tiknaz, currently a player of parent club Besiktas, but has spent the past season on loan with Rio Ave in Portugal. Reports are suggesting from Turkey that Celtic have made contact over his situation, and his situation is quite a peculiar one because even though he's a Besiktas player, and you would assume that means he will return to his parent club this summer, by the end of next week he could be a Rio Ave player. But that's not going to turn Celtic off because if you read the story, more details emerge that show that it actually makes a lot of sense and could be very realistic in terms of happening quite soon. So this is the article that came out of Turkey this afternoon. It's from publication Ebola, who we have spoke about a few times. We've used as a reference in the past many seasons before. They say that the British giant Celtic are targeting Demir Tiknaz. They have joined Lille in the interested parties for the Turkish midfielder as Rio Ave prepare to trigger a buyout clause of €5 million. So this is where it gets quite interesting. There is a buyout clause in the player's contract for Rio Ave to sign him permanently, which they need to activate by Tuesday, I believe. If you read on, it tells you. We'll get to that in a moment. But I think it's Tuesday they need to trigger this £5 million release clause. Now, Besiktas actually value him at around €8.5 million, which means that there's a player here that they are potentially losing money out on if they go off their own valuations anyway. So, do Rio Ave sign this player for €5 million and then Celtic sign him for 6, 7, perhaps €8 million and bank themselves some profit? That's what Ebola are suggesting is potentially about to happen. So their article goes on to say that Celtic have had initial contact with Rio Ave, not Besiktas, Rio Ave, to try and understand how they can move forward with a concrete proposal, but the Rio Ave directors will only look into the matter after buying the player from Besiktas. Their option is worth €5 million and does expire on Tuesday, as I mentioned. Once the operation is completed, they will have full negotiating power to respond to offers, which will have to be based on a fee of around €10 million. Currently with the Turkish national team on international duty, he has been a star player for Rio Ave this season and earning himself a spot in a very good national side at that, hence the reason that the number 10 million is being thrown around. Will Celtic spend the likes of £7-8 million on a defensive midfielder when Callum McGregor's already at the club? Don't say no, because we are going to have to start planning for life after Callum McGregor, and it could come through this very young and very talented midfielder. 6'4", has a very dominating presence in the middle of the park. If you go and watch some of the clips that are available of him from his highlights over this past season, you will notice he has a very calming technique in the middle of the park. He's very good at kind of separating the game and calming things down, moving the ball when he needs to move the ball and moving it in a smart manner. He looks like the sort of defensive midfielder Celtic really need for European games, just to bring that calmness and authority to the defensive midfield, to that area of the park between the defence and the attacking midfielders. I'm a big fan of this shout. Whether or not there's enough in it to make it believable and really credible, I'm not entirely sure. But there's definitely something there because we have, as I said, referenced Ebola a number of times, and it's got to have came from somewhere to begin with. He played 32 times for Rio Ave last season across all competitions. 4 goals and 2 assists from that deep position in midfield. He has a lot of good reviews, a lot of eyes on him at the minute, as we mentioned already. Lille are another club who are keeping tabs on the situation. It's a very unique one. We don't really hear about this happening all that much. The closest that I can think of was the situation with the Czech goalkeeper last year, who was in a similar situation with a buyout clause and potentially moving straight to Celtic afterwards. It didn't happen. Could it happen in this situation? We just need to wait and see, of course, but I'm all for it. I think that this is a position that ultimately in the next few years Celtic will need to spend big on to bring in a player that is going to help us massively in European games and to relieve Callum McGregor of the stresses that he's had in that position in Europe. His legs are only getting, more tired as he gets older. He's a great player, Callum McGregor. I don't doubt him for a second, but he's coming into his 30s and he's played so much more football than anybody else in that Celtic team. He needs that quality and support. We are going to have to spend big on this position, I think, in coming years. And would it be smart maybe to do that now when there's a situation unfurling that could cooperate really, really well with Rio Ave? Maybe so. So, yeah, I think this is one to keep an eye on, to be quite honest. From what I have read and from my own understanding, it seems that Rio Ave are living with the expectation that should they sign him, they will sell him for profit, and that's what they intend to do. I don't think there's much of an expectation at the club for him to stay, but it's a really smart business decision for them to trigger this fee and then sell him on for profit. And if Celtic are one of the competing clubs, I hope they take it quite seriously. I like the look of him. I think he could be very, very good. He's yet to make his debut for Turkey, but he is involved with the national team, so keep an eye on what might happen there, and you might see a bit more of him. But yeah, definitely one to keep interested about over the coming weeks, because I think there's something in this. But as is the story with every transfer window, there's not something in everything, and sometimes you have got to wade through the shite to get to the good stuff. And over the past 24 to 48 hours, there has been a lot of, and pardon my French, but may I just say, shite. There has been a lot of it. We're hearing numerous links about Nicholas Kuhn potentially moving on from Celtic. There was a story that came out this morning from France, which is suggesting Kyogo might come back. God, we have a few things to cover very, very quickly that I just want to say I wouldn't bank on happening. So the first one that we have to talk about is this story which has emerged that Nicholas Kuhn is on Brentford's radar. And I'm not one for targeting specific journalists on here. As someone who has a degree in journalism, I understand how tough it can be and how competitive a field it is. However, what I would say is it's not coming from a famously reliable source when it comes to Celtic news. In fact, if you're active on Twitter, or X as it's now known as, you'll know that the journalist who wrote this story has come under a lot of fire before for stories related to Celtic, and a lot of it comes from the team that he supports himself. And I'm not one of these ones who come out here to say that anybody that supports Rangers can't write a credible story about Celtic. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm just saying that the journalist in question has wrote some very, let's just use skeptical articles before. So this has emerged through a number of different publications now. I think it all spawns from this story in particular, that Nicholas Kuhn is a Brentford target should Mbeumo leave to go to Manchester United. I don't doubt for a second that Kuhn is on the radar of English clubs. I mean, we can go back as far as December or January time to remember the stories that I think Brentford were linked with him, Newcastle being another one of these clubs. I think we've heard Fulham have looked at him in the past as well. I just believe this whole sources have told team talk. I wouldn't buy into it, lads. I'm just going to go ahead and say that I think it's shite. And I mean, listen, if I'm left with egg on my face come the end of the transfer window, if Nicholas Kuhn is standing in the red and white Brentford shirt, fair enough. But I know when a story might spell the end of a Celtic player's career, and this isn't one of those stories. So I wouldn't overly worry about that. Mbeumo's set to go to Manchester United for perhaps upwards of £50 million. I just don't think Nicholas Kuhn is the player that's going to be replacing him. I think that this is a little bit of hearsay. I think this is maybe one of these stories that has been wrote with the thought of those rumours that were circulating in January time in the hope of some clicks and to stir up some hysteria. Yeah, I don't think there's anything in this at all. So I would just rubbish it if you've been reading it the last few days. And the other one that I wouldn't bother too much with that you might have seen over the last couple of days is stories like this. This was wrote yesterday afternoon about Kyogo and a potential return to Celtic, which was always going to be on the radar this summer. These stories were going to come up, so I'm not surprised when I'm reading them. I just think that some people are going to get a little bit carried away. I've already had a couple of comments in my last video bringing it up. And yeah, once again, it's an easy article to write, isn't it? Kyogo, career in turmoil in France. What's the easy story to write? Celtic are interested in him again. And this came from an article that was wrote in France. So now The Record and other publications are running from it. A publication called Foot 7 have claimed that a move back to Celtic could be on, and we've already inquired. A deal may make a concrete offer for the player this summer. I just don't see it happening at all, and I just think it's a lot of nonsense. I don't know, whoever's wrote this article in France has just, thought, let's take these silly bastards for a ride and write an article that will get clicks. But of course the publications over here, like The Record, are going to write these stories. It's natural to do so. I just don't think there's much in it. Be aware that it's happening, and listen, I'm not saying that Celtic maybe haven't had a word with Wren to see what the situation is, especially with how good he was at the club, at Celtic. But I just think that Celtic are ready to move past that chapter, and I think it's nonsense. So, once again, if I have egg on my face, that is fine, that's fair, I'll accept that. I wouldn't be adverse to Kyogo coming back, but I'd rather we moved in a new and fresh direction. So, yeah, I just don't think there's anything in this. Now, just to end off today's video, I want to talk about the transfer window itself and give you an update on some dates that we've spoke about on the channel over this past week. I will hold my hands up and say I have made a mistake with some of the dates that I have given you. So I just want to correct those mistakes while I can. The transfer window this year is a little bit more confusing. There's been a lot of misinformation on the internet about it, and I have fallen victim to the misinformation on a couple of occasions, which I like to say is unlike me. So I'm here to correct it and hold my hands up in saying that. So yeah, there is a couple of transfer windows. We are living in a mini one just now, which is open due to the Club World Cup being on, and because there is a registration date to do with that. So that closes on Thursday the 10th of June. And then the transfer window will reopen again on Monday the 16th of June, which is the permanent, or sorry, not the permanent, the proper window, which will be open permanently between the 16th of June and the 1st of September at 7 PM. That is when the deadline is supposed to strike. Now, the problem that I had was that Transfermarkt told me in Scotland the window ended on the 28th of August this year. That doesn't seem to be the case. It's Monday, September 1st, as usual. So, yeah, so apologies for any wrong dates. I've seen a couple of people saying that I've had them wrong or whatnot. I think I threw out the 12th recently on a live stream for the opening. It's the 16th for the reopening, so apologies for that, but now you know. Right, that does it for today. The big story being that Celtic have apparently inquired about Demir Tiknaz of Rio Ave / Besiktas, so we'll see if that goes anywhere. But until next time, enjoy your weekend, ladies and gents. It's been a pleasure as always, and I'll see you all next time.